India is reeling from one of its worst crises in recent times. But viewers, the international media has been far from sparing in its attack on the Modi-led government over its handling of the crisis.
A forum of advisors says that ministers failed to impose large-scale restrictions despite the alert in March. Mass political and religious rallies have since been cited as super-spreader events. A second wave of COVID-19 has left India battling record numbers of deaths and infections.
Foreign media has had a field day in talking about how the Indian government is failing its people.
It really is, Jake. We visited a government-run hospital in Uttar Pradesh. Some 200 million people living in that state. It's one of the hardest hit states, and the scenes we saw were absolutely harrowing.
This hospital is completely overwhelmed.
I mean, shortages of everything, shortages of beds, shortages of drugs, shortages of oxygen, but perhaps the most pronounced shortage that we saw on the ground was a shortage of medical personnel. 5 doctors and nurses were responsible for looking after all those more than 100 people.
You know, you can have a position that were we prepared, should we have been better prepared? The answer to all of those questions are subjective. Could we have increased the infrastructure overnight? Well, if there was a magic wand, yes.
One of the things that is so disturbing about watching this is it feels like something that you might have seen over a year ago. But to imagine that they weren't prepared with oxygen, it just doesn't seem that there's no excuse for it.
But should everything done by the government be a matter of suspicion and COVID politics for the opposition? Certainly not.
Crematoriums are running out of space too. Makeshift funeral pyres burn around the clock. The death toll in parts of India, both metropolitan and rural, is staggering. And worse still, the number of lives lost here so far is almost certainly vastly underreported.
I want to only ask one thing. Does the government at the center, does Narendra Modi have to do an Agni Pariksha every single day, thrice a day, to prove that he's working for every single Indian?
How do the Indian people feel in terms of their experience? Do they think their government is doing enough? Do they think the government's being supportive?
Well, it obviously depends who you speak to, but the places we've been going to and the people we've been talking with and the stories we've been hearing, people are very angry. People are deeply distressed. There's a real sense that this crisis didn't need to be quite as pronounced, quite as awful as it is, that other measures could have been taken, that other preparations could have been made, and that essentially there's been some real negligence from the government here. We're seeing a lot more people come out and be vocally critic of Prime Minister Modi and his party, the BJP.
The Western press should also highlight the context rather than just going after one individual to make a point that they've been trying to make without success for 6 years. We've just had an election in 2019.
Who knows what that means for his political future, Jake? He is still a very powerful political figure and largely popular, but certainly many people here really feeling very angry about the mismanagement of this crisis.
You won't be able to say this. What you're saying against the Prime Minister today, you won't be able to say this in Singapore.